If someone asked me what shaped the person I am today, I wouldn't hesitate to answer loss. It was loss that ignited the fire within me, a fire that both burns and lights the way. But right now, as I sit writing these lines, I can't help but shudder at the memory of the moment I lost everything. And not because of some twist of fate, but because of my own family member. My name is Julia Carter, 34 years old, born and raised in Seattle, Washington. People often think of Seattle as the city of endless rain, strong coffee, and busy tech entrepreneurs. But for me, Seattle is also the place that holds all the traces of my childhood, from the wooden house my father built by the lake to the sustainable fashion store I built with all those sleepless nights. I wasn't a special child. My parents were ordinary workers. My father was a construction engineer, my mother a librarian. We weren't rich, but we had enough to live on and were full of love. Then one rainy night, a truck driven by a drunk driver took both my father and mother in an instant. My sister Melissa and I became orphans while we were just stumbling into adulthood. Melissa is 3 years younger than me. She once studied communications in college, but dropped out because she felt overwhelmed. I chose a different path, diving into work, taking on every possible job to save money. Many people called me resilient, a bit stubborn, but only I knew that it was the only way to fill the enormous void my parents left behind. From the age of 25, I began nurturing a dream to open a sustainable fashion brand, where every product is made from recycled and eco-friendly fabrics. It sounds beautiful, but the journey was so arduous it seemed impossible. I worked 18 hours a day, ate instant noodles, and lived in a tiny one-room apartment. There were times I thought I would collapse, but memories of my parents, of how they always taught us to live kindly and persistently, pulled me back up. After many years, I opened Carter Designs, a small store on a quiet street in downtown Seattle. The initial customers were few, but through persistence and belief, I gradually built a reputation. Every stitch, every piece of fabric, every story about the rebirth of materials, all turned Carter Designs into a place that doesn't just sell clothes, but tells a story of revival. While I toiled to build my dream, Melissa took a different turn. After dropping out, she met Derek on a trip to Las Vegas. He was the kind of man many women fall for. Sharply dressed, smooth-talking, always seeming to hold the world in his hands. They got married just 6 months after meeting. I sat at that wedding, watching Derek raise his glass, smirking as he mentioned my store. It's cute, but real money is in real estate investments. I still remember those words, not because they hurt my pride, but because in his tone, I heard contempt and greed. I didn't hate Derek right then. I just worried for Melissa. My sensitive, fragile little sister had fallen into the arms of a man who was too good at manipulating others with words. I noticed that after marriage, Melissa became quieter, always looking to Derek before answering any question, as if afraid of displeasing him. But I reassured myself. It was her choice, and she was an adult. She had the right to decide her own life. In the years that followed, I focused solely on work. From a small store, Carter Designs gradually gained a steady customer base. I continued saving, bit by bit, for a bigger dream, opening a second store in the city center where I could reach more customers and prove that my dream wasn't fleeting. The numbers in my account grew slowly, from thousands to tens of thousands. One autumn morning I realized I had enough, $120,000, the amount needed to rent the space, decorate, and stock new inventory. I cried when I saw that number, not out of ambition, but because it held all those nights I sewed while shivering from the cold, the times I secretly drank coffee to stay awake at the sewing machine, and the shadows of my parents who seemed to watch over every step I took. And yet, just when I thought everything was set, another door opened, leading to a tragedy I never imagined I'd face. One Friday afternoon, as I was reviewing the lease contract for the new store, my phone rang. It was Cousin Emma, my cousin who always kept the family connected despite us being scattered everywhere. "Julia," her voice came through warm but urgent, "we're having a family reunion at the lake house this weekend. You have to come. It's been too long since the whole family gathered. Lake House. Just hearing the name made my heart ache with emotion. It was the wooden house by Lake Washington where the entire Carter family gathered in the summers. I still remember the smell of my mother's apple pie filling the kitchen, my father's hearty laugh as he taught Melissa to row the boat, and the incessant hum of cicadas from the pine forest behind the house. That house was a symbol of childhood, of connection, of memories that never fade. "I'll be there," I said, almost without thinking. Partly because I missed those memories, partly because I thought it might be a good chance to reconnect with Melissa after months of little contact. I hoped that in the family atmosphere, we could rediscover the closeness we'd once had. I didn't know that decision would open the darkest chapter of my life. But I do know that if I want to tell you this journey, from faith to betrayal, from pain to rebirth, it has to start from the moment I accepted that invitation. I share this story not just to recount my own pain, but so that you, if you've ever experienced loss, betrayal, or found yourself teetering between trust and collapse, know that you're not alone. If you've been through something similar, let me know in the comments. Because sometimes just daring to share makes the pain lighter, and from there, we find the strength to move forward. There are places where just stepping foot pulls you straight back into the past. For me, the family lake house is one such place. The wooden house by Lake Washington witnessed all the summers of my and Melissa's childhood. Running under the sun, my father's voice teaching her to row, and the aroma of my mother's apple pie baking through the kitchen. As I drove down the familiar road, my heart pounded as if I were 15 again. I told myself, this will make everything better. This is the chance for Melissa and me to be close like before. But sometimes the places we think are safest are where the deepest pain takes root. I arrived on a weekend afternoon. From afar, the lake house appeared under the sunset. Dark wooden roof, wide porch with long benches. On the steps, Cousin Emma waved, her smile as bright as ever. "Julia, you're finally here!" I stepped out of the car, taking a deep breath. The lake air was still fresh, carrying the faint scent of pine. In that moment, my heart softened, believing this trip would bring peace. But as soon as I opened the wooden door, I heard the familiar boisterous laugh, Derek's laugh. He stood in the middle of the living room in a tight white shirt, his gold watch gleaming under the light. Holding a glass of wine, Derek spoke loudly enough to drown out everyone's conversation. As soon as he saw me, he smirked. "Oh, here she is, the businesswoman of the year. Still selling those recycled old dresses?" The room let out an awkward chuckle. I forced a smile, but inside, irritation crept in. "Yeah, still doing that," I replied calmly. "And the store is about to open a new branch." Derek's eyes flashed with something, not surprise, but mockery. He sneered. "Expanding in this economy? Bold move. I just closed a real estate deal promising double the returns. That's real money." His words landed like a knife, splitting the atmosphere. I noticed no one in the room contradicted him. Even Melissa, my sister, stood beside him, silently nodding. I looked at her. The old Melissa was always laughing, always talking, always finding ways to make me laugh even when I was stressed. But today she barely spoke. Every time I tried to chat, her eyes darted away, as if afraid of something. I could see she always glanced at Derek before answering, like waiting for permission. My heart ached. I wanted to pull her away, ask what was really going on, but I knew, not yet, not in this family gathering. The evening passed in an atmosphere that was both familiar and strange. Relatives asked questions, shared memories, but amid those stories, I always felt Derek's gaze like a blade slicing through. When I went back to my room, I set my laptop on the table to check work emails. I still had a lot to handle for the store expansion plan. After sending a few documents, I closed it and went down to the kitchen to help Cousin Emma prepare dinner. About 2 hours later, when I returned, I immediately sensed something was off. My laptop charger cord wasn't in its usual spot. I'm meticulous, always plugging it into the fixed position. But now, the plug had been switched to another port. I sat down, opened the machine. Everything looked normal at first, but my heart started racing. I opened the browser. The search history was blank, as if freshly deleted. A chill ran down my spine. Right then, a notification popped up. One failed login attempt from an unknown device at 8:47 p.m. I froze. Someone had tried to access my account, right in this house. I immediately changed my password, enabled two-factor authentication, and locked all important files. My fingers trembled as I typed each character. In my head, questions flooded. Who? Why? Was it just curiosity or something else? I thought of Derek. Images of him flaunting his watch, talking about real estate, smirking about my store, all came into sharp focus. And Melissa, my sister, growing quieter, more distant. A vague premonition hit me. Danger was very close. I closed the laptop, carefully placed it back in the drawer, and locked it. I took a deep breath, telling myself to stay calm. This was a family reunion. I didn't want to cause any trouble. I needed to keep the peace, at least until morning. But as I stepped into the hallway, I suddenly saw the door to the opposite room slightly ajar. In the darkness, an eye gleamed, cold, sharp as a knife. Derek was standing there, staring straight at me. We locked eyes for just a few seconds, but to me, it felt like centuries. In that gaze, I saw something I'd long tried to deny: greed and calculation. The door closed. A cold rush filled my chest. I knew this wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. Have you ever felt uneasy in what you thought was the safest home? My story from here dives deeper into secrets and betrayal. If you find this story compelling, comment Y. If not, comment N, so I can know your honest thoughts. People often say the worst nightmare doesn't come in sleep, but when you open your eyes in the morning. I used to think that was just a cliche, until that morning in the familiar lake house, when I understood what it meant to have the truth stripped bare ruthlessly. I was woken by the insistent ringing of my phone. On the screen was Claire's name, my longtime business partner and closest work friend. Her voice was panicked, trying to stay calm. Julia, what's going on? The payment to the supplier just bounced back. The system says the account is empty. I was stunned. No way, I muttered, rushing to the table and opening my laptop. My fingers shook as I logged into the bank. And then, everything collapsed before my eyes. Checking $0, savings $0, business $0. The entire $120,000, the money for the second store, had vanished without a trace. I sat frozen, unable to believe those blank numbers. Years of my sweat and tears, every penny saved from meager meals, from sleepless nights sewing, all stolen in one night, leaving no trace. My heart pounded wildly, my hands icy cold. I called the bank back, putting it on speaker so everyone in the kitchen could hear. The bank representative's voice was even, emotionless. Ms. Carter, the transfer started at 11:42 p.m. last night and ended at 4:15 a.m. this morning. They were made from a device previously logged in at the lake house address. All passwords and security questions were entered correctly. Every sound in the room stopped. I looked up to see relatives' faces stunned, worried, and even suspicious. It felt like the whole world was staring at me. I stammered. No, impossible. Someone used my laptop. Someone here. My gaze instinctively scanned the room, then stopped at Derek. He sat there, casually pouring coffee, sniffing the aroma as if it had nothing to do with him. Beside him, Melissa stared down, her hands clenched so tightly her knuckles turned white. Derek, I said, each word heavy as lead, did you touch my computer last night? He raised an eyebrow, then let out a mocking laugh. Julia, your sister's imagining too much. Maybe you entered the wrong password? Or your partner has financial management issues? The room buzzed. I felt a wave of suspicion spreading, like cold wind seeping through cracks. I stared straight at Derek. If you're innocent, show everyone your accounts. In that moment, I saw his smile falter briefly, then quickly regain composure. I don't need to prove anything to anyone. Melissa let out a soft whimper, as if wanting to speak but swallowing it back. I looked at her, my heart filled with conflict. My sister, why was she silent when everything was so obvious? I took a step toward Derek, my voice trembling but firm. Can you look me in the eye and swear you had nothing to do with that money? He leaned back, arms crossed, his eyes flashing defiance. Then, in a cold tone, he delivered the final knife blow. We needed that money more than you. In an instant, the kitchen exploded. Gasps, whispers, scraping chairs. Aunt Linda covered her mouth. Uncle George jumped up, face flushed red. cousin Emma exclaimed, "What did he just say?" I felt suffocated. My ears rang, my heart thundering. I couldn't believe he could be so brazen right in front of everyone. But what hurt me most wasn't his words. It was the image of Melissa, my sister, still head down, no reaction, no denial, no defense. The pain of betrayal crushed my chest like a vice. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "Derek, you just admitted to taking my money." He shrugged, his lips curling in contempt. "Calling it taking sounds too harsh. Just a transfer, and I guarantee I'll use that money more effectively than you." I saw Aunt Linda burst into tears and Uncle George slam the table, shouting, "You bastard, you just confessed to theft!" But Derek just threw his head back and laughed. His laugh echoed, harsh and grating, bouncing off the lake house's wooden walls, colder than ever. In the chaos, I stood still, my hands clenched numb. Inside, emotions tore at me. Anger, humiliation, and an unnamed pain at seeing my sister bound in silence. But then, amid the turmoil, I heard my own familiar voice whispering in my head, "Julia, you've overcome so much. You can't fall now." I lifted my head, staring straight at Derek, each word clear. "I'm calling the police." The room went silent again, and right then, Derek's eyes flashed. No longer mockery, but something else. Aggression, feral. I saw his hands clench, his jaw tighten. In that moment, I knew the real storm was approaching. People often say the darkest moment is the one just before dawn. But that morning at the lake house, dawn didn't break. Only thick darkness enveloped everything, heavy enough that I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my chest. As soon as I declared I'd call the police, Derek jumped up. His face no longer held its usual mocking grin, replaced by furious rage. He lunged forward, grabbing for the phone in my hand. "You're not calling anyone!" he roared, like thunder exploding in the familiar kitchen. I stepped back, clutching the phone, my heart racing. In my eyes, Derek was no longer the slick man in the white shirt, but a predator revealing his true nature. The room froze, only heavy breaths and toppled chairs audible. Uncle George immediately stepped forward, shielding me from Derek, his large hand raised like a barrier. "That's enough, Derek. No one gave you permission to touch Julia." In that moment, I felt both grateful and afraid, because Derek's eyes were bloodshot, his jaw clenched, as if he was ready to strike anyone in his way. Melissa stood behind him, trembling, her hands twisting until they bled. I managed to hit the emergency call button. But before the line connected, an unexpected sound came from the front door, a forceful knock accompanied by a shout. "Police, open up!" The room froze solid. Derek whipped around to the door, eyes wide. I nearly collapsed. Never in my life had the words police sounded so terrifying yet so salvific. The door flew open. Two uniformed officers entered, followed by a plainclothes female investigator flashing her badge. "I'm Detective Harmon, Seattle Police Department. We're here on a fraud alert from the bank. Who is Julia Carter?" I nodded, my voice choked. It's me." Derek tried to regain composure, stepping forward. "This is a misunderstanding. I don't know why you're here." Harmon looked at him coldly. "Is that so, Mr. Henderson? Then how do you explain the bank data? All the withdrawals originated from a device logged in at this exact address during the time you were present?" The room was so silent you could hear the clock ticking. I took a deep breath, opened my bag, and pulled out my phone. "I have proof," I said, handing the screen to Harmon. "I installed security software after a previous hack. It automatically takes photos on login, records keystrokes, and saves full access history. Here, the images." The screen clearly showed the photos. Derek sitting right in front of my laptop, his face fully visible under the room's golden light. The timestamps matched the transaction times exactly. Harmon conferred quickly with her colleague. Seconds later, the cold click of handcuffs echoed. "Mr. Derek Henderson, you are under arrest for financial fraud, theft, and unauthorized access to a personal system. You have the right to remain silent." In that moment, I saw Derek lose all strength. His body sagged, face ashen. But in his panic, he turned to Melissa and screamed, "You think you can escape me? You're nothing without me!" Those words sent shivers through the room. Melissa burst into sobs, but this time she wasn't silent. She screamed, her voice broken but fierce. "Enough, Derek. I'm not letting you control me anymore. I've lived as your shadow for too long." I'd never seen my sister like that. Tears streamed down her face, but in her eyes gleamed the light of liberation. I choked up, wanting to run and hug her, but my feet felt glued to the floor. The police dragged Derek to the door. He yelled and thrashed. "Traitors, you'll all regret this." The door slammed shut, leaving behind suffocating silence. I turned to Melissa. She was still trembling, her small shoulders shaking. I stepped closer, placing my hand on her shoulder. She looked up, eyes red and swollen. In them, I saw both fear and a fragile spark of hope. I whispered softly, "You were so brave, Melissa." She broke down, collapsing her head onto my shoulder like the child she once was, scared of the dark and running to me for comfort. I held her tight, my heart aching with both pity and pain. Pity because she'd finally found her voice. Pain because to reach this moment, she'd endured so much pressure and control. In that instant, I knew clearly the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Derek was arrested, but his shadow lingered. Melissa needed time to heal, and I needed to hold firm to protect both the business and the family. I looked out the lake house window. The sky was thick gray, wind whipping through the pines. I knew the real storm hadn't passed yet. If you want to hear more stories and similar dilemmas I'm facing and feel empathy for that, you can check out my previous videos on this channel. People often say time is the medicine that heals all wounds. But for me, time is just the frame. What truly heals comes from forgiveness and from daring to face the pain instead of avoiding it. After the day Derek was handcuffed and taken away, everything felt like a whirlwind. The local news ran a brief story: young entrepreneur arrested for fraud. I hated how they called a con artist an entrepreneur, but I had more important things to do: rebuild my life, sustain Carter Designs, and protect my sister. The bank, thanks to the security software and clear data, agreed to reimburse 97% of the lost amount. The rest was covered by fraud insurance. When I saw the account nearly restored, I burst into tears. Not for the money, but because I knew my dream hadn't been crushed. The second store could still open. My efforts still mattered. Melissa moved in with me right after Derek's arrest. At first, my Capitol Hill apartment had only one bedroom and a small office. I rearranged everything, turning the office corner into her space. She didn't bring much, just a few outfits, a suitcase of old books, and eyes shadowed from long, sleepless nights. That first evening, she sat on the sofa, head down, crying. I sat beside her, not asking, not pushing, just handed her a hot cup of tea. When she looked up, her voice hoarse. "I'm sorry, Julia. I knew. I knew for a long time he wasn't worthy, but I was too scared to leave." I pulled her into my arms, whispering, "You don't need to apologize. You just need to be brave from now on." In the days that followed, Melissa started over. She applied to return to school, enrolling in an evening program for digital communications. She also found a part-time job at a nearby coffee shop. I saw in her eyes for the first time in years a spark, faint, but truly there. One weekend afternoon, we decided to return to the lake house to clean up. The house had been empty for months, dust everywhere, wooden doors creaking like complaints. But for me, the lake house still held the soul of our parents. We opened the windows, swept cobwebs, dusted family photos. Melissa found an old box in the attic. Inside were faded albums and a thick sealed envelope. On it, in familiar handwriting, to Julia and Melissa. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a letter from Mom. The paper was yellowed, but the writing clear. Her voice seemed to echo in the room. "My dear girls, if one day your father and I are no longer with you, remember that money is just a tool. It can buy a house, but not family. It can open doors, but not hold hearts in place. Your true wealth is each other. Hold on to that, because nothing can replace it." We read to that point and both broke down crying. Melissa hugged me tight, sobbing. I let him come between us. I did the opposite of what Mom said. I stroked her hair, tears rolling down. "No, Melissa, we're sitting here together. That's proof we've never truly lost each other." In that moment, all resentment, all distance dissolved. Just two sisters embracing in the old wooden house, as if Mom was smiling from afar. After that day, I began to feel Melissa's change more clearly. She no longer avoided, no longer depended. Instead, She took initiative to cook dinner, laughed telling class stories, and once even boldly offered to help design posters for the store. I realized forgiveness freed not just her, but me too. For years, I'd shouldered everything alone, believing only I could protect, only I knew best. But Mom's letter taught me, holding on doesn't mean one sacrifices all. It means sharing both pain and hope. Carter Design's second store opened the following spring. The location was right in downtown Seattle, with large glass walls overlooking the street, filled with natural light inside. I stood in that space on opening morning, heart fluttering with nerves and excitement. This wasn't just my effort. It was the result of us not letting betrayal bury our dreams. That day, Melissa wore a dress I designed, helping customers choose outfits, her smile radiant as if no scars remained. When our eyes met, I saw new faith growing in her and in me. That evening, after the last customer left, I sat down and wrote invitations to the whole family. Next week, let's all return to the lake house, but this time not to witness brokenness, but to celebrate a new beginning. I want everyone there because this success isn't just mine, it's the Carter family's. I set the pen down, taking a deep breath. In my heart, I heard Mom whispering, "Hold on to each other." And I knew the next chapter wouldn't just be mine and Melissa's, but our entire family's. There are moments in life that make you realize true success isn't in the bank balance or the bright lights of an opening day. True success is when you look around and see those who once doubted now quietly smiling, see family, though once fractured, sitting together again. And that morning, as the doors of Carter Designs #2 swung open, I knew I was living one such moment. The new store was on a bustling street in downtown Seattle. Transparent glass walls reflected the morning light. Inside were minimalist, yet elegant clothing racks. I'd chosen every hook, every paint color, every potted plant in the corner to create a feel that's both modern and welcoming. But no matter how prepared, that morning I was so nervous I had to breathe deeply several times to stay calm. Melissa stood beside me, squeezing my hand lightly. "You did it, sis. Enjoy it." I turned to look at her. My sister was transformed. No more fearful eyes, no more hunched posture. Instead, a confident smile, hair tied back neatly, and eyes sparkling like I'd finally met the real Melissa again. As the doors opened, groups of customers flooded in, friends, partners, and familiar family faces. I spotted cousin Sarah, who once dismissed my first store as Julia's fashion hobby. I saw Aunt Linda dabbing tears, Uncle George nodding proudly. In that moment, I almost heard my parents' voices echoing somewhere. The opening ceremony buzzed with energy. Customers tried on clothes, staff bustled, laughter mingling with soft music. I stood in the middle, gratitude swelling in my heart. But I knew today wasn't just about the store. It was about something bigger, a gift to the family and to my parents. As the noise quieted, I stepped onto the small platform, microphone trembling slightly in my hand. I looked around, all eyes on me. "Thank you all for being here today," I began, voice catching. "This isn't just my store, it's proof we can rise after loss, rebuild after betrayal." I paused, breathing deeply, then continued. "And to honor my parents, David and Margaret Carter, I want to announce this. Starting this year, 10% of Carter Design's annual profits will go to the David and Margaret Carter Scholarship Fund, supporting low-income design and small business students in Washington state." The room went quiet for seconds, then erupted in applause. I saw Aunt Linda wipe her eyes with a tissue, Uncle George turn away to hide his red eyes. Cousin Sarah stepped up, taking my hand, voice shaking. "Julia, I'm sorry. I used to belittle you, think you were just dreaming. But today, you've shown us all. You're not just doing it for yourself, but for the community." I squeezed her hand, smiling in forgiveness. Melissa stepped up beside me, her voice clear amid the applause. "You didn't just save me from Derek, you taught me to live for others. I'm proud to have you as my sister." I hugged her in front of everyone. The applause swelled again, but this time I didn't hear it as noise. I heard it as the heartbeat of family uniting. The afternoon flew by in joy. When the store closed, we didn't go home right away. Instead, we drove together to the lake house. The house had been renovated over the previous summer, Polished wooden floors, freshly painted walls, new frames, but keeping the familiar old brown color. On the porch, Cousin Emma had set up a long table for dinner. The scent of apple pie wafting in the wind choked me up, as if Mom was somewhere in the kitchen, smiling and watching. The whole family gathered, laughter ringing through the house that had witnessed so much tragedy. When dinner ended, I brought out a new photo. Melissa and me, standing in front of the new store, beaming smiles. I hung it on the living room wall, right next to the old photo of our parents. Everyone stood silent for a moment. I heard Aunt Linda whisper softly, "The Carter family is back." That night, sitting on the porch, watching the lake reflect the moonlight, I knew this journey had come full circle. We'd endured loss, betrayal, turmoil. But in the end, we chose forgiveness, chose sharing. And that returned to us not just money or careers, but family. I placed my hand on Melissa's shoulder, saying softly, "See, Mom was right. Money is just a tool. Our true wealth is us sisters." She leaned her head on my shoulder, whispering, "And now we found each other again." Perhaps only after this full journey did I truly understand that money can be lost and regained. But family bonds, once cracked, can only be mended by forgiveness. I've endured betrayal from my own family, watched my sister drown in fear, and faced pain that seemed insurmountable. But then, we chose to forgive, chose to hold hands and move forward. And that choice opened a new door, where trust is rebuilt, where the true value of family is affirmed. The important message I want to send you is, success isn't just in numbers or status, but in our ability to share, to love, and to place family above all calculations. If my story resonates with you, or reignites your belief that every wound can heal through forgiveness, let me know. Leave your thoughts in the comments, like, and subscribe to the channel to join me on this journey of sharing family stories, where we learn together to become stronger and better every day.